Since the 1980s, life jackets have been classified by a type system. So the Coast Guard's had type 1, 2, 3, and 5 wearable life jackets, or personal flotation devices, and a type 4 throwable device. This all changed in 2014. And the reason it changed is because the Coast Guard, in the process of harmonizing their rules with the rest of the world, decided that they can no longer refer to life jackets by type. Now this threw a lot of confusion into the marketplace because we're used to talking about type 1s, and suddenly that's not going to be used after 2016. So in the course of making this video, we have to decide if we're going to talk about the old world that everybody's familiar with or the brave new world that's out there in the future. So we're going to talk about both. The first old type of life jacket was the type 1 or offshore life jacket. And this one you can see has soulless tape on it. It's got lots of buoyancy indicated by how thick it is. They have a minimum of 22.5 pounds of buoyancy, and they tend to come in standard sizes like 90 pounds and above, because these are designed for commercial vessels. And they're not actually intended to be worn a lot. They're intended to be worn when you have a crisis on board, like a fire or the boat starts to sink. A lot of offshore boaters consider a type 1 to be the best type, but they miss out on an important fact. Virtually nobody wears a type 1 life jacket at sea because it's cumbersome and restricts your movement. Therefore, if you're not wearing it and you fall overboard, it does you no good. So while this meets commercial standards, a type 1 offshore life jacket really doesn't have a place on most sailboats. The second is the type 2, formerly known as the type 2, or the nearshore buoyant vest. These are the inexpensive ones you can buy for $10 or less at more sporting goods stores. It provides adequate in-water performance. But once again, I would argue that it's very unlikely that you're going to wear one of these unless you're forced to. And so it doesn't fulfill the magic obligation that you have to wear a life jacket when you're on the water. Again, type 2s really don't have a place in sailing. The next category is what we used to call type 3s, or flotation aids. These have about 15.5 pounds of buoyancy or more, and they look like vests. There's a wide variety of these for water sports activities like water skiing and wakeboarding or tubing. You can also find them for use by anglers because they have pockets and a variety of features. This is one that you'd see on a scholastic or collegiate sailor. Very comfortable, very flexible, adjustable. It conforms to the body so it doesn't get in their way, and it provides a modest amount of buoyancy. Now, there's one tricky thing here. Some products that look just like this type 3 flotation aid fail to qualify to be a type 3 for some reason, like they're have a side zipper maybe, or they're hard to put on. They may be perfectly good life jackets, but because they don't conform to the standard, they're considered type 5s. What we used to call type 5s are special use devices. Now this is a catch-all category for anything that doesn't fit in type 1, 2, or 3 categories. So here's an example. Here's a belt pack, which is considered a type 5. It's worn around the belt, it's inflatable, it has a lot of great features, but it doesn't conform to the other standards. So this becomes a type 5 or special use device. Here's another type 5. This looks just like an inflatable vest that would normally be a type 3, but it isn't because it has a built-in harness. Because it has a built-in harness, there's special instructions that go along with this sailing vest. As a result, it's a type 5. Now, my point here is you should never take the fact that something was listed as a type 5 as a negative. You just have to know the special requirements under which it was given that designation so you can figure out if it's appropriate for your type of boating. One more thing. What type is this? This isn't any type. This is a European vest that's made to a different standard, an ISO standard. And as a result, it doesn't qualify as a Coast Guard legal life jacket on your sailboat. Turns out it's a really good sailing vest for offshore use. So if you're using an ISO certified life jacket like this one, you'll have to have a Coast Guard approved life jacket in addition on board your boat, which fits the intended wearer, because this, if the Coast Guard comes aboard, they'll pretty much ignore this one. So that's the overall general description of what we used to have Coast Guard 1, 2, 3, and 5s. When we're talking in the future, we're going to try to drop that and talk more about the attributes of the life jacket. And remember, in the future, if you're trying to figure out if a life jacket is legal to wear, forget about the type, but read the label. The label is where the information is that gives you the information to know if it's legal for recreational, commercial, sail, power, and so forth.